Greetings, everyone. Tonight we're going to start the John Bolton book, The Room Where It Happened. I'm going to wait for everyone to get in. I'm about 5 minutes late, but I just got finished getting in a spat with the Department of Public Works, the Baltimore City Department of Public Works, about their terrible PR and their terrible communication with citizens. They thought I guess they thought I didn't have time because they decided to do something that I thought was incredibly tacky. Okay, incredibly tacky, and shame citizens for their lack, the Department of Public Works lack of being able to pick up trash. Instead of here's the thing, and we're going to get started. This is why everybody is coming in. I want to get this out here. Good PR. And for all of the local politicians that are watching this right now, please, whoever at the Department of Public Works, you need to have a discussion with how they deal with their PR. Good PR is not an Instagram post. I think we've been living in the Trump era a little bit too long. Good PR is not shaming citizens who are already frustrated, down on their luck, with a lot of people unemployed. If you are having trouble emptying trash or picking up trash, that's understandable. But you communicate that to citizens. You don't post a picture in a voters group of 10,000 voters, Baltimore City voters group of 10,000 voters, and post a picture of a dirty alley and a clean alley, and making it seem like y'all had to clean up this alley when it's two different alleys. Okay? First of all, people's alleys, yes, some of them do look a mess. We need to change it. But also, too, when you have a lot of your department out because they're sick from COVID, and you don't communicate that until weeks later, and people are all working from home, where are they supposed to put their trash? Are they supposed to keep that in their house? Is that what you're saying? Furthermore, if you are backed up, this is what you do. See, this is how I know you're not doing business. You're just showing up to work. If you didn't have the workers to do the job, what you could have done was contracted an outside company, because these outside companies love to take city and government money. You could have contacted an outside contracting company to come and pick up trash in the city. Or what you could have done, if you knew that you weren't able to pick up trash due to a shortage, you could have rented dumpsters and placed those dumpsters in certified designated zones where people do not have cars, as a lot of people in the city don't, so they can't drive to the dump and drop off their trash. Or provided more cans for people. But what you don't do is post in a voters group where people are paying taxes, because you got it. I think they got it fucked up. Like, y'all don't do this shit for free. We pay for this. And I know some of y'all are like, what the hell is he talking about? Baltimore City know what I'm talking about. Okay? We pay for this service. This isn't free. You didn't volunteer. You don't volunteer for a check. And the reason why they responded was because last year they did an audit and found that a lot of the DPW workers were stealing overtime, i.e. stealing from citizens, okay, and taking it out. Why we're talking about trash? Because I just got finished arguing with the Department of Public Works. That's why. We're going to get into the book in a minute, but I'm going to speak my piece because I'm chopping this video up and we're going to post this online because they need to hear it. Okay? We're going to get to this Bolton book, but we wait for everybody to get in. Sidebar, John Bolton is from Baltimore, so it all coagulates any damn way. But back to what I was saying. Those are the things that you do. You don't post in a voters group where people pay taxes and actually go out to polls about how to clean their alleys. Number one, it's disrespectful. Number two, you're basically saying, oh, y'all dirty. I had time today. And I had time to argue with the Department of Public Works. And I did tag the city council president. I did tag my contacts in city government. And I tagged the news. Because I had time today. Okay? So, if the next time you decide to, because I know the department head of Public Works did not approve that message. The next time y'all decide to crack slick on social media, remember who you're cracking slick to. Okay? And that's all I have to say about that. Shout out to the Baltimore City Department of Public Works for your terrible fucking communication and leaving citizens in the dark. Now, John Bolton. John Bolton released his book. Just some background information on John Bolton. I didn't know he's from Baltimore. He was raised in Gale Heights. Went to McDonough. I had no clue. He's a Baltimore guy. And I was very, very shocked by that. I looked through the book. I skimmed through it because I had the luxury of getting a free copy. I did not pay for this book because, especially after skimming through it, I feel like this is stuff that should have been reported to Congress. And that really, you shouldn't profit off of not doing your job and letting the country burn to dust, essentially. So what I want to start with, chapter 4. It's titled The Singapore Sling. Now I'm going to jump around in this book because there's certain chapters that I feel like aren't really that warranted, to be honest. A few chapters, but I want to get to the meat and potatoes. So we're going to start with chapter 4, The Singapore Sling. Now, I just glossed over this chapter, but this is basically when Trump met Kim Jong-un. And, he's like, yeah, we're going to make a deal. And they did that summit and that bullshit and all of that. And we got absolutely nothing. So we're going to start with chapter 4, The Singapore Sling. Even as we neared withdrawing from the wretched Iran nuclear deal that Obama has set up, bitches tried it, Trump's focus on North Korea's nuclear weapons program resumed. The more I learned, the more discouraged and pessimistic I became about a Trump-Kim summit. I was deeply skeptical of efforts to negotiate the North out of its nuclear weapons program, which Pyongyang had already sold many times to the U.S. and others in exchange for economic benefits. So basically, they were supposed to denuclearize to get more, sanctions lifted and things like that. Despite breaching its commitments repeatedly, North Korea always cajoled a gullible America back to the negotiating table to make more concessions, ceding time to a proliferator which invariably benefits from delay. Here we are at it again, having learned nothing. Worse, we were legitimatizing Kim Jong-un, commandant of the North Korean prison camp, by giving him a free meeting with Trump. It called to mind Winston Churchill's dark 1935 observation about Britain's failed policies towards Germany. When the situation was manageable, it was neglected. And now that it is thoroughly out of hand, we apply too late to the remedies, which then might have effected a cure. There's nothing new in the story. It is as old as the Sibylline books. It falls into that long, dismal catalog of the fruitlessness of experience and the confirmed unteachability of mankind. Want of foresight, unwillingness to act when action would be simple and effective, lack of clear thinking, confusion of counsel until emergency comes, until self-preservation strikes its jarring gong, These are the features which constitute the endless repetition of history. So basically, he found a long, convoluted way to say, basically, bitch, we ain't learned our lesson yet. We could have been had this situation with North Korea under control, but people keep playing, and by the time the shit gets out of hand, it's too late. Now we gotta go into emergency mode. That's basically what he said in that whole paragraph, if you didn't catch that, because, bitch, I almost got confused by all of that shit. The congealed and the sibylline and all of that, whatever. Having endured 8 years of Obama mistakes, which I constantly feared would include dangerous concessions to North Korea, as his Iran policy had, not to mention the Bush 43's administration's failed 6-party talks and Clinton's failed agreed framework, I was sick at heart over Trump's zeal to meet with Kim Jong-un. So, he's throwing all of the presidents, basically the last 3-4 presidents, under the bus. So, it ain't nothing personal. Pompeo told me that Trump's fascination with meeting Kim dated to the administration's outset. Clearly, the options were very limited. On April 12th, in the midst of the Syria whirlwind, I met with my South Korean counterpart, Chung Il-yong, director of their National Security Office. In March, in the Oval Office, Chung had extended Kim's invitation to meet to Trump, who accepted on the spur of the moment. Ironically, Chung later all but admitted that it was he who had suggested to Kim that he make the invitation in the first place. This whole diplomatic fandango was South Korea's creation, related more to its unification agenda than serious strategy on Kim's part or ours. The South's understanding of our terms to denuclearize North Korea bore no relationship to fundamental U.S. national interests, from my perspective. It was risky theatrics, in my view, not substance. I urged Chung to avoid discussing denuclearization at the upcoming April 27th North-South Summit to prevent Pyongyang from driving a wedge between South Korea, Japan, and the U.S., one of its favorite diplomatic strategies. I told Trump that we needed the closest possible coordination with Moon Jae-in to avoid North Korea's engineering a split between Washington and Seoul. I wanted to preserve U.S.-South Korean alignment and avoid the headline, Trump rejects South Korea compromise, but he seemed unconcerned. So basically what I'm getting from that paragraph is that South Korea was basically trying to mend fences with North Korea, trying to bring this whole thing together and using us as a way to do that. Later in the morning, I met with my Japanese counterpart, Shitaro Yachi, who wanted me to hear their perspective as soon as possible. Tokyo's view of the looming Trump-Kim meeting was 180 degrees from South Korea's. In short, pretty much like my own. So Japan was like, bitch, ain't nobody, why the fuck is Trump meeting with Kim? Bitch, we know he crazy. So Tokyo bitch, he's crazy. Why y'all doing it? I have no clue. Okay, so Tokyo wasn't with the shits. Okay. Yachi said they believed the North's determination to get nuclear weapons was fixed and that we were nearing the last chance for a peaceful solution. Japan wanted none of the action for action formula that characterized Bush 43's failed 6-party talks. Action for action sounded reasonable, but inevitably worked to benefit North Korea by front-loading economic benefits to the North, but dragging out dismantling the nuclear program into the indefinite future. The marginal benefits to Pyongyang of even modest economic aid or release from pain like easing sanctions was much greater than the marginal benefits of us of the step-by-step elimination of the nuclear program. So when he says action for action in this section, I can see now I'm gonna have to break his book down because this bitch is just talking high level shit, at least to me. What he's saying in this program is this. Japan basically was not here for the shit. Japan is like, we ain't trying to do this, you wash my back, I wash your shit. Japan is like, they gonna drag their feet. Basically, we would have to ease sanctions and give them some economic benefits first before they even started making steps to denuclearizing North Korea and basically, dismantling some of their nuclear arms. Which, if we're being honest, I think it's kind of strange to have one country tell you can't have nuclear weapons, but we can have nuclear weapons, but you can't. Only me and my friends can have nuclear weapons. And how does that work? Now, granted, Kim Jong-un is unpredictable and his sister is even worse. But in theory, if I run my own country, who are you to tell me that I can't have something, but y'all loaded to the teeth on your end? Okay? So basically, in this agreement, Japan's like saying, they ain't going to do shit. They ain't going to denuclearize. Y'all going to sit and give them all this shit, all these sanctions, and they're going to play in y'all face. That's basically what Japan is saying. Okay? So Kim Jong-un knew this just as well as we did. At that point, Japan wanted dismantlement to begin immediately upon the Trump-Kim agreement and to take no longer than 2 years. So Japan like, look, bitch, if y'all do this shit, bitch, we ain't fit to be waiting 5 or 6 years. This shit needs to be gone like tomorrow. Stat. Okay? I urged, however, based on the experience in Libya, that dismantlement should take only 6 to 9 months. So Bolton like, fuck 2 years, bitch. I'm talking about by the end of the year, this shit need to be done. Yachi only smiled in response. But when Abe met Trump at Mar-a-Lago the following week, Abe asked for dismantlement to take 6 to 9 months. Yachi also stressed North Korea's abduction of Japanese citizens over many years, a powerfully emotional issue in Japan's public opinion and a key element in Abe's successful political career. At Mar-a-Lago and later, Trump committed to pursuing this issue and followed through faithfully in every subsequent encounter with Kim Jong-un. Pompeo, the administration's initial contact for North Korea as CIA director, remember him, was already negotiating the summit's venue and date, and the prospect of releasing 3 American hostages. Kim wanted to meet in Pyongyang or Panmunjom, both of which Pompeo and I agreed were non-starters. Pompeo saw Geneva and Singapore as the 2 most acceptable choices, but Kim didn't like to fly. Didn't know that. North Korea's rickety airplanes couldn't reach either city anyway. Shade. And he didn't want to be too far from Pyongyang. My hope, maybe the whole thing would collapse. At Mar-a-Lago, Abe spoke at length about North Korea's nuclear program, stressing, as had Yachi in our earlier meeting in Washington, that we needed a truly effective agreement. Unlike the Iran nuclear deal, which Trump had so frequently criticized, and which the Obama administration itself had emphasized was not even signed. Of course, Pyongyang was just as capable of lying about a sign as an unsigned document, but it might just trip them up. Abe also urged Japan's long-standing positions that in discussing ballistic missiles, we include short and medium-range missiles, which could hit significant parts of Japan's home islands, as well as ICBMs, which North needed to hit the continental United States. Similarly, Japan also wanted to eliminate the North's biological and chemical weapons, which I agree should be part of any agreement with Pyongyang. Trump asked Abe what he thought of Kim's recent visit to Xi Jinping in China, and he said it reflected the impact of America's implicit threat to use military force and the cutoff under international sanctions of much of the oil flow from China. Abe emphasized that the U.S. strike against Syria a few days before had sent a strong signal to North Korea and Russia. Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, had been frightened when Bush 43 included the North in its axis of evil, and military pressure was the best leverage on Pyongyang. I thought Abe's convincing presentation would sway Trump, but the impact turned out to be limited. The Japanese had the same sense that Trump needed continual reminders, which explained why Abe conferred so frequently with Trump on North Korea throughout the administration. So basically in this section, what they're doing is they're discussing what we're going to be discussing, what we want out of the deal. Bitch, we want them short-range missiles. Japan, like, get them missiles the fuck up out of here. We want the long-range missiles that can reach some of the U.S. territories to be out of the deal, to be in the deal as well. So they're basically discussing the deal. Now, on April 21st, North Korea announced with great fanfare that it was foregoing further nuclear and ballistic missile testing because it was already a nuclear power. The credulous media took this as a major step forward, and Trump called it big progress. I saw just another propaganda ploy. If the necessary testing were now concluded, Pyongyang could simply complete the work necessary for weapons and delivery system production capability. Chung returned on April 24th before Moon's inter-Korean summit with Kim at the DMZ, the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. So there's a zone, if you're not familiar, between North and South Korea that's supposed to be like Switzerland. It was relieved Chung contemplated that the leaders' declaration would only be 2 pages, which meant whatever it said about the nuclearization could not be very specific. I sensed that South Korea believed Kim Jong-un was desperate for a deal because of the pressure imposed by sanctions, and that economic development was the North's top priority now that it was a nuclear weapons state. I did not find this reasoning comforting. Meanwhile, Pompeo was narrowing the options on timing and location for the Trump-Kim meeting, probably June 12th or 13th in either Geneva or Singapore. On April 27th, Moon Kim Festival at the DMZ had everything but doves with olive branches flying around, but was actually almost substance-free. On Friday morning Washington time, I gave Trump a copy of a New York Times op-ed by Nick Eberstadt, one of America's most astute Korea watchers, which rightly called the summit P.T. Barnum style, a sucker is born every minute diplomacy. I didn't think Trump would read it, but I wanted to emphasize my view that South Korea's agenda was not always ours and that we needed to safeguard our own interests. Fortunately, the Panmunjom Declaration was remarkably anodyne, especially on the nuclear issues. Moon called Trump on Saturday to report on his talks. He was still ecstatic. Kim had committed to complete denuclearization, offering to close their Punggye-ri nuclear test site. This was just another sham concession, like blowing up the U-Bone's nectar cooling tower under Kim Jong-un. Moon pushed hard for the Trump-Kim meeting to be at Panmunjom, followed immediately by a trilateral with both Koreas and the U.S. This was largely a Moon effort to insert himself into the ensuing photo op, as we would see again in June 2019. So basically what happened in this section is that basically Bolton is saying South Korea is cute, but they really ain't got our best interests at heart, which they shouldn't, because they're their own country. Every country is going to have their best interests at heart. So reading this book and reading his take, we got to also understand that John Bolton is not a nice person. I just want to put that out there in context. This man is not a hero. He is not somebody that, you be like, damn. He was somebody that's there, but we also have to look at what we're reading with a little bit of caution. So we'll see. Trump seems swept up in the rapture, even suggesting advancing the Kim meeting to mid-May, which was logistically impossible. Fortunately, Moon conceded that Kim preferred Singapore, which helped nail down the venue. Trump said finally that Pompeo and I would work with Moon on the dates, which was reassuring. Moon had asked Kim to denuclearize in 1 year, and he had agreed, agreeably close to a time frame I suggested. Ironically, in the months that followed, it was harder to get State to agree to a 1-year schedule than to persuade Kim. The two leaders strategized about how to proceed, and Trump asked Moon to specify what we should request from North Korea, which was quite helpful. This was clever diplomacy because whatever Moon wrote, he could hardly object if we asked for it. And if we were tougher than Moon, he had at least had his say. Moon complimented Trump's leadership. In turn, Trump pressed him to tell South Korea's media how much Trump was responsible for all of this. He then spoke with Abe to strategize further about the Trump-Kim summit in light of Moon's report on his meeting with Kim. Abe repeated all the key points he had made at Mar-a-Lago, in contrast with Moon's over-optimistic perspective. Not trusting Kim, Japan wanted concrete, unambiguous commitments on both the nuclear and the abductee issues. Abe stressed to Trump that he was tougher than Obama, showing clearly that Abe thought it necessary to remind Trump of that point. So, basically, North Korea sends this sham statement out saying, oh, we're going to denuclearize. We're going to put all of this shit, we going to do it. And Japan basically saying, bitch, he is not going to do this shit. Your president is dumb. We need facts, bitch. We need dates. We need receipts. We need time. Okay? Our dumbasses or Trump dumbasses like, bitch, where's the photo op? Let the press know we get ready. Let's get ready to get shut down. We get ready to kill this shit. And Japan is like, bitch, is you crazy? Okay? Crazy. I spoke later with Pompeo, then traveling in the Middle East, who listened to the Moon call scenario. The Moon call especially had been a near-death experience, I said, and Pompeo responded. Having cardiac arrest in Saudi Arabia, after a few more gyrations, we settled on Singapore for the summit meeting on June 12th or 13th. On Monday morning, Trump called me about my appearances on 2 of the Sunday talk shows, where much of the discussion concerned North Korea. I have been very good on television, he said, but I needed to praise him more because there's never been anything like this before. After all, Moon said he would recommend Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. Trump said, however, that he didn't like my reference to the Libya model for denuclearizing North Korea because of Muammar Gaddafi's overthrow 7 years later during the completely unrelated Middle East Arab Spring. I tried explaining that the model for nonprofit analysts was completely removing Libya's nuclear program, not Gaddafi's subsequent unpredictable demise. History showed that I didn't get through. Trump failed to understand the unforeseen Arab Spring, which swept dramatically through the region beginning in 2011, was the reason for Gaddafi's subsequent downfall, not his 2003 renunciation of nuclear weapons. This was not Trump's era alone. Many engaged in the classic logical fallacy of post hoc, ergo propter hoc. After this, therefore because of this. Exemplified in a sentence from a 2019 New York Times story. Nonetheless, Trump ended the conversation by saying, "Great job." Ironically, Trump himself said at a later press conference that when he referred to the Libya model, he meant the total decimation of Libya. Now that model would take place with North Korea if we don't make a deal. Most likely, a few minutes after Trump made those remarks, the vice president gave me a high five and said, "He's got your back." Trump himself said, "You're clear. I fixed it." So you call people, and this is not a surprise here, you call people in your office because they do a great job on TV, but we just need to mention you more, which now gives kind of like more credit to those stories that you see on CNN where they say, oh my God, if he doesn't speak up, if this person doesn't praise Trump enough, or they're praising Trump because they know that's what they need to do in order to keep their jobs, Bolton is basically confirming that in this passage here. Crazy stuff. There were also significant developments on the hostage front, where we were getting increasing indications that North Korea would release 3 U.S. prisoners if Pompeo personally flew to the north to receive them and return them to America. He and I didn't like the idea of his going to Pyongyang, but freeing the hostages was significantly important that we decided to swallow it. Trump cared nothing about who picked up the hostages. not seeing it as an issue. Chung came to me a third time on May 4th, providing more details on the Panmunjom meeting. He stressed that he had pushed Kim hard to agree to complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization, which had long been our formulation going back to the Bush 43 administration, and would be an important rhetorical step for North Korea. According to Moon, Kim had seemed amenable, and the pre-urged Kim to reach a big deal with Trump, after which specifics could be discussed at working levels, stressing that whatever benefits the North might receive would come after accomplishing denuclearization. Kim said Chung said that he understood all of this. Moon wanted to confer with Trump in Washington in mid to late May before the Trump-Kim summit, which we ultimately agreed to. Later that day, Japan's Yachi also came to my office to discuss the Moon-Kim summit, showing just how closely Japan followed the entire process. So, during all of this getting ready for this summit and this meeting, Japan is watching everybody, because Japan know that Kim Jong-un is full of shit, and they know that this shit is going to fall through, and it's going to be whack as hell. So Japan, whole time, Japan is just sipping tea. They watching. They know what's going on. Yachi wanted to counter the euphoria emanating from Seoul. Not that I was overcome by it, stressing we should not fall for the North's traditional action-for-action approach. Pompeo left for Pyongyang on Tuesday, May 8th, picked up the 3 American hostages, and returned with them to Washington, arriving at Andrews after 2 a.m. on Thursday morning. Trump greeted the returning men in an incredible, hastily arranged, middle-of-the-night, broadcast live arrival ceremony. The 3 released Americans were understandably exuberant, raising their arms in celebration when they had exited the plane into the bright spotlights. They loved speaking to the press and were the hit of the night, enjoying, thankfully, a return from North Korea far different from that of the fatally tortured and brutalized Otto Warmbier. The Marine One flight back to the White House, passing very near the illuminated Washington Monument, was also almost surreal. Trump was on cloud 9, even at 3:30 a.m., when we landed on the South Lawn, because this was a success even the hostile media could not diminish. Maneuverings for the Trump-Kim meeting continued apace. In particular, we worried about what China was doing to influence the North Koreans, and closely followed what key Chinese players like Yang Jiechi, China's former ambassador to Washington during Bush 43, former foreign minister and now state counselor, a position superior to foreign minister in China's system, were saying to their counterparts and in public. I had concerns that Beijing was setting the stage to blame the United States if the talks broke down, warning that North Korean hardliners were undercutting Kim Jong-un for releasing the American hostages without any reciprocity from the U.S. Under this scenario, there was no consensus within the system in the North, and that strong resistance from Pyongyang's military meant that the talks were in jeopardy before they even began. The answer? More preemptive concessions by the United States. This is one of the oldest games in the communist playbook. Frightening, gullible Westerners with tales of splits between moderates and hardliners, so that we accepted otherwise unpalatable outcomes to bolster the moderates. Chung did not worry about the North's recent announcement that only journalists would attend the closure of the Punji test site, not nuclear experts as they had previously committed to. Pyongyang might just as well invite the Bobsey twins. While this ploy was destroying something rather than building it, Grigory Potemkin's ghost was nonetheless undoubtedly celebrating his continued relevance. Chung and I were on the phone constantly over the following week, preparing for Moon Jae-in's visit to Washington and the Trump-Kim Singapore meeting. We spoke repeatedly about the Punji closure, which was pure fluff, starting with the lack of, so that was the nuclear site that was supposed to be closing, okay, which was pure fluff, starting with the lack of any U.S. or international site inspections, particularly examining the tunnels and underground facilities before any preparations for or detonations closing the adits, the tunnel entrances. So they were supposed to be closing the tunnel entrances to the site. By precluding each in such inspections, North Korea was concealing key information. Nuclear forensics experts, as was common practice, could have extrapolated significant conclusions about the size and scope of the nuclear weapons program. Other locations in the North Nuclear Gulag that we wanted to disclose and inspect it, and more. We knew from experience in Iraq in 1991 and thereafter, which I had lived through personally during the 41 Bush administration, that there were enormous amounts of information that could be very effectively concealed without adequate, persistent on-site inspections before, during, and after any denuclearization. Subsequent international monitoring, such as the International Atomic Energy Agency's taking soil samples outside the adits, was no substitute for inspections inside the mountain, as the North fully understood. So basically, they can go and test the soil outside, but that's still not going to really tell the whole scope of how big the program is and what's still going on inside of the nuclear testing site. So basically, in this passage, they're talking about how this site in North Korea, this nuclear plant, this nuclear site, weapon site, is going to be closed. And basically, Bolton saying, yeah, this sounds nice in theory, but there's no way we can really enforce that unless we go in. Okay. This propaganda charade was evidence not of Pyongyang's good faith, but of its unmistakable bad faith. Even CNN later characterized North Korea's approach as like trampling on a crime scene. Chung thought that the issue could be raised in an inter-Korean meeting at Pyongyang later in the week, but the North canceled the meeting at the last minute, another typical habit. They then expressly threatened to cancel the Trump-Kim meeting, complaining about an annual U.S. South Korean military exercise called Max Thunder. This was another propaganda ploy, but it and later complaints about these military exercises, absolutely vital to our joint military preparedness, turned out to influence Trump beyond the North's wildest expectations. I told Trump about this North Korean eruption at about 6:30 p.m., and he said our press line should be, whatever the situation is fine with me. If they would prefer to meet, I'm ready. If they would prefer not to meet, that is okay with me too. I will fully understand. I called again at about 7 o'clock and listened at length to Trump criticize the South Korean U.S. military exercise. He had been against it for a year. Couldn't understand why it cost so much and was so provocative. Didn't like flying B-52s from Guam to participate, and on and on and on. I couldn't believe that the reason for these exercises to be fully ready for a North Korean attack hadn't been explained before. If it had, it clearly hadn't registered. Competent militaries exercise frequently, especially in an alliance. Joint training is critical so that the allied countries don't cause problems for themselves in a time of crisis. Fight tonight was the slogan of U.S. forces, Korea reflecting its mission to deter and defeat aggression. A decrease in readiness could mean fight next month, which didn't cut. As I came to realize, however, Trump just didn't want to hear about it. The exercises offended Kim Jong-un and were unnecessarily expensive. Case closed. So basically, those South Korean military exercises, those are used for us to stay ready. If you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. We've all heard that saying, right? So Trump is so worried about his meeting getting fucked up, he already don't like how much it costs. Now, this is the thing. For a man that bankrupted businesses for a living, he is always worried about where money being spent. Are you stealing? Is this coming out of your budget? What else is going on? I can't. In the meantime, we were working on logistics for Singapore. On one critical point, Pompeo suggested that Kelly, and I be with Trump whenever he was around Kim, to which Kelly and I readily agreed. I also worried how cohesive we could be given the daily explosions everyone became inured to in the Trump White House. One such bizarre episode in mid-May involved disparaging remarks by Kelly Sadler, a White House communications staffer, about John McCain. Her comments dismissing Ms. McCain and how he might vote on Gina Haspel's nomination as CIA director because he's dying anyway, leaked to the press, immediately creating a storm. Trump wanted to promote Sadler, while others wanted to fire her or at least make her apologize publicly for her insensitivity. Sadler refused and got away with it because Trump, who despised McCain, allowed her to. Sadler turned her own insensitivity into a weapon by accusing others of leaking, a frequent offensive tactic in the Trump White House. In an Oval Office meeting, Trump rewarded her with a hug and a kiss. Although this debacle was hardly my issue, I went to see Kelly at one point, figuring that surely rational people could get an apology out of this insubordinate staffer. After a brief discussion with just the two of us in this office, Kelly said, "You can't imagine how desperate I am to get out of here. This is a bad place to work, and as you will find out." He was the first to see Trump in the morning and the last to see him at night. I could only conjecture how many mistakes he had prevented during his tenure. Kelly attacked the press, fully justifiable in my view, and said they're coming for you too, which I didn't doubt. So once again, Bolton is not a nice guy. This is not a nice man, okay? North Korea continued to threaten canceling the Trump-Kim meeting and attack me by name. This is nothing new, dating to 2002 under Bush 43, when North Korea honored me by calling me human scum. They attacked my citing the Libya model of denuclearization, saying we shed light on the quality of Bolton already in the past, and we do not hide our feelings of repugnance toward him. Of course, it was clear to everyone on our side of the negotiations that they were really denouncing the very concept of complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. South Korea remained concerned about the North's efforts to scale back the joint military exercises. Even the dovish Moon administration understood full well the exercises were critical to their security and worried this was yet another Pyongyang effort to drive a wedge between Seoul and Washington. Chung said that North was clearly trying to split Trump away from me, relating that at the April 27th Moon-Kim meeting. Several North Korean officials asked about my role in the Trump-Kim meeting. I felt honored once again. But more important, North Korea continued denouncing the joint military exercises, now attacking Moon. The present South Korean authorities have been clearly proven to be an ignorant and incompetent group. Such attacks were the North's not-so-subtle way of intimidating Moon into doing the North's work for it by pressuring us, a ploy we were determined wouldn't succeed. More seriously, Kim's chief of staff did not arrive in Singapore as scheduled on May 17th. Preparations for North's paranoid leader were formidable, even if dwarfed by what it took for a U.S. president to make such a journey. Delay in laying the groundwork could ultimately postpone or even cancel the meeting itself. By May 21st, no North Korean advance team had arrived. Hence, there were no meetings with our team in Singapore. Trump began to wonder what was up, telling me, "I want to get out of Singapore before they do," which sounded promising. He recounted how with the women he had dated, he never liked to have them break up with him. He always wanted to be the one doing the breaking up. One question was whether to cancel Singapore just as Moon Jae-in came to town or wait until he departed. I urged Trump to act now because doing so after Moon left would seem like an explicit rebuff of Moon, which was unnecessary. Trump agreed, saying, "I may tweet tonight." At Trump's request, I spoke with Pence and Kelly, who both agreed he should tweet away. I reported this back to Trump, and Trump started dictating what his tweet might say after several drafts. This is interesting. Based on the fact that dialogue has changed pertaining to North Korea and its denuclearization, I respectfully asked my representatives to inform North Korea to terminate the June 12th meeting in Singapore. While I very much look forward to meeting and negotiating with Kim Jong-un, perhaps we will get another chance in the future. In the meantime, I greatly appreciate the release of the 3 Americans who are now at home with their families. A follow-up tweet would say, "I'm disappointed that China has been unable to do what is necessary, primarily at the border, meaning sanctions enforcement, to help us obtain peace. The Oval was then filled with staffers to prepare Trump for a dinner with state governors. As he left, Trump said he would probably tweet after dinner at 8 or 9 o'clock. I returned to my office to brief Pompeo, and he said, I get it. Let's go with the strategy. I walked to Pence's office to tell him about the tweets. Both of us were very confident Trump would cancel Singapore that evening. But when we woke the next morning, no tweets had emerged. Trump explained to Kelly later that his cell phone had not been working the night before, but he told me he wanted to let Moon have his say before canceling. So it was with a distinct lack of enthusiasm that I met Chung and his colleagues for breakfast in the ward room to discuss the Moon-Trump meeting later in the day. The South still wanted Moon in Singapore for a trilateral after the Trump-Kim meeting. Another important topic in our discussion was the declaration ending the Korean War. I originally thought the end of war declaration was the North's idea, but I later started to suspect that it was Moon's, emanating from and supporting his reunification agenda. Another good reason not to buy it. Substantively, the end of the war idea had no rationale except that it sounded good. With the possibility nothing much else would emerge in Singapore. We risked legitimatizing Kim Jong-un not only by having him meet with the U.S. president, but also by holding a Ghazi peace summit, undermining economic sanctions by suggesting the North was no longer dangerous, and not just at a nuclear level. I was determined to stop anything legally binding and also to minimize the damage of whatever objectionable document Trump might agree to. I worried about Moon's pitching Trump on these bad ideas, but after all, I couldn't stop it. I walked to the Blair House to meet Pompeo ahead of our 10 a.m. meeting with Moon, Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-wha, and Chung. Moon was characteristically optimistic about Singapore, and after an hour, I returned to the White House to tell Trump what we had discussed. I joined one of the intelligence briefings Trump had every week from Director of National Intelligence Coates, CIA Director Haspel, and briefers who accompanied them. I didn't think these briefings were terribly useful, and neither did the intelligence community, since much of the time was spent listening to Trump rather than Trump listening to the briefers. I made several tries to improve the transmission of intelligence to Trump, but failed repeatedly. It was what it was. When I arrived from Blair House, Trump was telling the briefers he had written tweets about canceling Singapore the night before, but concluded he would wait a little bit longer because there was still some chance it might come off, and he didn't want to cancel before the absolute last minute. It made me feel worse to see how close we had come. Moon arrived, and the two leaders soon thereafter greeted the press, hordes in the Oval. The extended questioning, mostly on China issues, substantially shortened Moon's one-on-one with Trump. After the two leaders entered the cabinet room, Trump opened by saying there was about a 25% chance the Singapore meeting would happen, which I suspect he also told Moon in private. In response, Moon stressed his support for complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization and his optimistic view that there was a 0% chance Singapore wouldn't happen. Trump was worried about appearing too anxious, but Moon hastened to assure him it was really North Korea that was anxious. Since nothing like this had ever happened before, Trump said he wanted a structured meeting in Singapore, which shocked me and which didn't happen in any event. He asked why no experts were being allowed to visit Punji Ra, and we explained that many believe, myself included, that Kim had made a verbal commitment to close the test site without really understanding what he was saying. So, let's take a look at this, because this is a lot. With this chapter, and with this whole Kim Jong-un Singapore meeting, it was very telling to me. Where things stand. Now, we also got to take what Bolton's saying with a grain of salt. Because this is one man's account. While I do think some of this is true, a good portion of it is, we got to understand that he's also writing it to make himself look great. Okay? I find it interesting that looking at this, you have several points of view. Japan is like, we don't believe any of this shit. Why y'all falling for this shit? Okay. Why y'all even entertaining this? So Japan wasn't with the shits from the beginning. Moon, South Korea's guy, he's basically looking out for South Korea. South Korea and North Korea also working on this whole unification agenda. So Moon is basically trying to play the middleman and be like, oh, we brought the U.S. and North Korea together and we're going to do this and we're all going to be unified in North Korea and South Korea. Japan is like, fuck that shit. Even a lot of our government officials are like, this is crazy. But Trump, in the guise of wanting to be recognized, wanted to do something historic that really wasn't fact-checked or really looked into thoroughly, he wanted to rush the process for the most part. And Kim Jong-un is playing with him. He basically playing with him. He basically saying, okay, yeah, I'll denuclearize, but I'm not really going to denuclearize. Now, we did get the 3 hostages out of North Korea, which was great. But a lot of this, basically to sum up this section of the book, to me, and this is just my opinion, while it does give insight, like, this is stuff that, to me, and maybe regular people don't know this, people don't know this, but I feel like these are things we already knew. Like, we knew he wasn't shit. We knew that this was a photo op. We knew that this meeting, that Kim Jong-un wasn't going to do anything. Hell, Japan knew that he wasn't going. Everybody knew that he wasn't going to do anything. This is not really anything new under the sun. I think what's happening with these books, and to be honest with you, I know everybody wants me to read this book. Honestly, I'm not really interested in this book. And I'm going to be 100 with you. Because there's not nothing in here that we don't already know. Now, I'm interested to read his family member's book. Because she's giving us the behind-the-scenes tea of how he got to where he is. And that's a different kind of story. But, like, I'm glad that they leaked this book. I'm glad that I didn't pay for this. I didn't want to buy it anyway. If I'm being 100 with y'all. Because we've got to look. We got to look differently. And people would say, well, DDM, you read Omarosa's book. That book was different. And I'm not saying that because I met Omarosa. I swear to God, my hand before God, anybody who knows me knows I keep it 100. That book was different. That lady had conversations. She had tapes. She had receipts. She had some behind-the-scenes tea and shit when shit was quiet. This man reading this book ain't doing nothing but selling you stories that you already know the answer to and the outcome to, with a little bit of background and hindsight. But it's not anything like, honestly, I feel like I wasted my fucking time reading this book. I'm going to be 100% with y'all. It's confirmation. Yes, but how much more confirmation do we need? Like, we keep, like, how much more confirmation do we need? Like, this is something that you could have told Congress. Like, this is just, minor details. And basically minor details, and I'm going to be honest, this is just a book of minor details for you to make yourself look better having served in this administration. Because, honestly, John Bolton, you have a terrible reputation already. If you haven't Googled this man, Google him. Okay? It's not, you're trying to save your ass. I may read one more chapter out of this, but I'm going to keep it 100 with you. It's more shit that we got to deal with and talk about than this motherfucker's book. I know y'all like for me to read to y'all. It's cute. I get it. But the next literature I read is probably going to be Trump's niece's book, because she's going to be giving us background tea. And that's a hell of a lot more interesting and shit that I don't already know. Because right now, based on what I'm reading, This is shit I was watching on the news. This was shit I was reading in the newspaper. And that's no shade. His niece book, we probably gonna get into that niece book, sis. Because the niece book is giving you background tea. But right now, I'm going to skip through this and I may read one more chapter. But I'm not reading this man's whole book for him to tell me shit and play in my face that I already know about. He really don't deserve the price. I'm just saying. Matter of fact, while we online, let's Google when the niece book come out. So we can have a realistic expectation. And looking at the comments, most of you agree with me, which is refreshing. That's good. But I'm glad that the thing that I do like about reading these books, you guys, and like talking about this stuff, is it saves you that time. I'd rather us read this together for an hour and see that it's full of shit than you go out and give this man a #1 New York Times bestseller for some bullshit. So let's see. Niece book. So the Trump family is suing the niece, FYI, about her book. Let's see when it come out. Okay, so it's supposed to be coming out in late July. Trump is allegedly suing his niece because of a non-disclosure agreement at NDA. So he's gonna try to block this one too. We'll see if he's more successful. But as far as this Bolton book, I'm gonna give this shit an F. I'm going to be honest with you. It gets the Secretary of Shade, F. And see, this is the thing. This is a classic example why a lot of these Trump books as of late, I just haven't been reading. Because, like I said, with Omarosa's book, it was just different. It was a different revelation. She had receipts. She was giving us information that we didn't already know. Okay? Which made it different, which made it insightful. And what I liked about Omarosa's book was that she spoke to the listener and the reader in their language, so it was easier to translate. And that book was a character study on the people that were working there and what they were like and what was going on. Like, you basically telling me, this Bolton book, he's basically telling me shit that any political analyst reports on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News or any of these news outlets. He didn't really give you anything but confirm what you already knew. But on that note, I'm going to call it an evening. I'm going to go watch Doom Patrol. I'll probably meet up with you guys at some point later this week. And, talk about whatever news event is going on. I have to go finish dealing with the Department of Public Works because it ain't over, sis. I'm going to get y'all because y'all tried it. Do not come for the citizens of Baltimore. You guys have a great evening. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you follow and click the bell for notifications. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Deborah Dan Midas. You guys have a great evening. I appreciate and love you guys so much. And be blessed. Oh, you know what we might want to talk about is these fireworks. I think that's going to be my next special. Probably Thursday or Sunday. But yeah, we're going to get into that in detail. But you guys have a good night. Be blessed. I'll talk to you soon.